Hey guys, welcome back. I have just the recipe for a super healthy but delicious preparation. I did say but because generally we feel that what is healthy is not really delicious and comprises largely of vegetables and leaves. This recipe shows that not to be the case. It is also a fantastic way to get your kids to eat fish. These salmon fish cakes can also be cooked with any other fish that you like. I like haddock, or there's also cod which you can use. But today I'm going to use salmon. So let's get cooking. To start making the salmon, I'm going to cut the vegetables first. I've got red chilli here. I'm taking a small quantity of red chilli because there's a small portion I'm going to cook. So I've literally got half a red chilli here. And if you don't like it spicy, you can always take out the white seeds. The white seeds have the main spiciness of the chili factor. Chop your chili very finely. This goes on the side. Now again, when you chop your chilies, make sure you don't rub your finger on your face, nose, eyes, nose, ears. It begin to burn. Some ginger. You don't need large quantities of these vegetables here. You need small quantities, just enough to give it a bite or a texture. When you're making fish cakes or any kind of a cake or a tikki, don't use a paste or a puree because then it makes the mixture very wet. So try and use the finely chopped vegetables like ginger and garlic and chili. So they give a very nice bite to the dish. Garlic, I'm using just 1 clove of garlic. Again, finely chopped. That's the garlic done. I've also got some parsley here, which I've pre-chopped and kept, and spring onion. Spring onion in fish cakes and with tikkis works very well. It's got a very gentle flavor. But if you want something a bit stronger, you can always use red onions. Avoid using white onion because white onions have got more moisture in them. And also when you sweat or you cook them, they become slightly mushy. Whereas a thing like red onion holds shape quite well. I'm using spring onion because I just love the idea of spring onion and potatoes, spring onion and salmon. For me, it really works well. The flavors work extremely well. Just finally chopping these spring onions. And when I'm going to cook my mixture, I'm not going to cook my spring onions. I'll add them at the very last. So treat your spring onion more like a herb because you don't really cook an herb. You add it at the very last stage of the dish. So I'm going to keep that on the side. And I have potatoes here. Now the potatoes I have actually pre-boiled. I boiled them in salted water. If you want a richer flavor or want to make it spicy, you can always add some garlic, ginger or green chili or red chili powder into the water and then add in your potatoes. So when the potatoes boil in them, they also get a very nice flavor of their own. Now, the ratio we normally use for making a fish cake, which I like to do, is have more of the fish and less of the potatoes. The potatoes literally act like a binding agent that keeps it together. So I would say 20% of potatoes and 80% of your fish. Or if you're using a chicken or a red meat, that is perfectly fine. Now, because the potatoes have been pre-cooked, you don't want to use salmon which is raw. So I'm going to lightly cook the salmon and then flake it up. But before that, I'm going to just lightly crush the potatoes. And as you can see, because they are already boiled, they become crushed very easily with a fork. Try and from the shop get potatoes which are of the boiling variety. Don't get the roasting variety because roasting variety is not going to become as mashed as the boiling variety. The boiling varieties are a little more waxy as such. So potatoes are done, vegetables are done. So it's now time to cook the salmon. To cook the salmon, I've got a non-stick pan. So I'm going to slightly warm up the non-stick pan. with little quantity of oil. Because I'm using salmon, salmon has a very delicate flavor, and the best salmon you can get is the Scottish salmon, because the waters where the salmon breeds is quite full of minerals, has got very good flavor, and it's best to use the organic salmon. It really tastes nice. Also, when you're making a fish cake and something like those, you can actually use trimmings, and the belly part or the lower ends of the fish, which are not really prime cuts, can go in them. So I've got a few pieces here, and you can see I've got one which is right from the center, which is a nice little like a cut in the center, and then I have something which is on the side. So you can probably use all the sides and it works perfectly well. The center parts you can use for main courses or stuff like those. But anyway, when you use it for making cakes and for pies or for fillings, when you go to break it and flake it, always go for the belly portions or the tail end portions, which are not very meaty and chunky. Because the salmon is so delicate, I am not going to add any flavor into it. So there is no marinade going into it. All the flavors go in with the vegetables. So I've got the red chili, I've got the garlic, and I've got ginger, spring onion, and parsley. To cook the salmon, when you're cooking it, always put the fish skin side down. So when you put the skin side down, it begins to sizzle. The skin begins to crisp, and the heat transforms further, and the fish cooks. It does splutter because we've got moisture in the fish. So splutter, the oil sputters everywhere, so it will go around. But that is perfectly acceptable. Also, as you're cooking it, it releases a lot of its flavors. It releases a lot of its natural oils. And all these oils and flavors goes into the pan and mix around with the oil used to cook the salmon. Now, that oil has a lot of flavor on its own. So never throw away that oil. Let the oil remain in the pan. And when I'm going to cook my vegetables, I'm going to add in the same oil. So I'm not adding any extra oil, but the same oil is being reused. Just want to make sure that the fish cooks. And because it is a non-stick pan, it takes a less amount of fat and oil to cook. And also cooks very evenly. You can use a cast iron pan, they work very well. I do love cast iron pans, but for normal home use, they are a bit difficult for everyday use for people who are not used to cooking. But the cast iron pan holds heat extremely well. So lightly toss that. The small piece I flip over first, so that cooks fastest. The good thing with salmon or any white fish is that it cooks quite quickly. Then you can actually see it as you cook. So you look at the colors at the edges, the color changes from pink to becoming almost whitish, pinkish or opaquish. And that's the color you know you want when the fish has to be further cooked. You flip it over to the second side and then you cook the fish. You see that? Look at the color. It takes on a whiter shade. The same thing with here. If you look at a fish, there, the color has changed. Let me do this. Salmon is such a nice fish to have just on its own with some mushy peas or some garlic peas, or to serve it with some kind of a khichdi or a upma or even some risotto. It works very well. The flavors are quite nice. Salmon even takes flavors quite well. One of our signature dishes is our tandoori home smoked salmon, where we actually smoke the salmon with charcoal and with cloves, a bit of cassia or cinnamon and green cardamom. So it gives a nice flavor in. And because we've got a very kind of a unique flavor of its own, and it's an oily fish, it does take flavors quite well. But flavors which are complementary to it. You cannot add very harsh flavors to salmon, otherwise it overpowers the flavor of the salmon altogether. We'll just cook on the sides. You see that? The flakes shape opens out. So when you actually break it down, all these flakes come out very easily. I'm going to flip over to the second side. This is nice and golden. You see the color? Yeah. And the last piece. That's nice and golden. Just need to make sure that the salmon cooks through right to the center. We're keeping it slightly pink. Let me see if I can open one, I'll show you. Yeah, there you can see that. It's cooked through and through. The same thing with a small piece. That is cooked through. I'm going to take off the salmon and let that cool a bit. This was a large one, so I want to cook it a little more. To lower the heat down. And the last piece is also done. I have not seasoned the salmon at all at the moment. I'm going to do the seasoning at the very end. Now in the same oil on a low heat, I'm going to add the garlic. I'm going to add the ginger and the red chilli. I'm going to lightly saute the mixture. Then goes in my boiled potatoes. Oh, the chili hits you. There we are. So the potatoes were lightly tossed in the oil. I'm going to add seasoning. So salt goes in now. And switch off the heat. So the potato has now absorbed all the flavors from the oil. The fish is already cooked. The potatoes are mixed up with the vegetables, and this will now be used to make the fish cakes. The salmon has cooled down slightly, so I'm going to take off the skin and I'm going to flake the salmon. So literally just peel off the skin. And all I will do now is just lightly flake it off. I want it to still be chunky in the fish cakes and not really mashed up. So just gently flake off the salmon. So you can see all the large chunks. Also, when you're flaking it off, it helps to cool down the salmon. And when you're making the fish cakes, it is easy for you to mix it. So you're not mixing it into hot food as such. You're mixing it at room temperature. I mean, the cakes are so nice to have on their own, or if you have any leftover cakes, you can use it the next day and put inside, say, a wrap or your tortilla, or if you get any pita bread, it works well. You put it on as flake fish on top of a salad. I think it's brilliant. There you are. And since I'm already cooking it, I have the option to try it. Oh, nice. Okay, that is done. Potatoes are ready. Now I'm going to mix it up and make it into nice little cake shapes. To mix the salmon fish cakes, you first put the potatoes into a bowl. They're all at room temperature now. This pan has to be kept because I'm going to again further cook the fish cakes and lightly grill them. So I'm keeping them on the side. They still have a lot of flavor. So when I cook it, all the flavors come in here. I'm going to add chopped parsley. I had the chopped spring onion. I'm going to add all of that. This, the flake cooked salmon. and gently mix it together. So the potatoes would just about bind the fish cake. Now I have not put any salt in the salmon yet. The salt was only in the potato mixture. So a quick taste to see if it needs it or not. It does. Salt, and lastly a squeeze of lemon juice. The citric flavors of the lemon juice work extremely well with the fish cakes. If you want, you can even add in the rind of lime leaf, of lime or of lemon. It will work quite nicely. I'm just putting lemon juice. Mix this together. A quick taste. Perfect. This will now go in the fridge for approximately 5 minutes for it to get slightly cooled down, so I can just shape it into a cake. But in the meantime, I'm going to show you how to make a mustard mayonnaise. For the mustard mayonnaise, we begin with mayonnaise. I'm using a vegan mayo. If you remember, I done a recipe on my channel which says how to use aquafaba and oil along with mustard and sugar and salt, and how to make a vegan mayonnaise. So you can either do a vegan mayonnaise, or you can simply buy in ready-made mayonnaise and mix it up with mustard. It works well. And now mustard, there are various varieties. The one in India is called a kasundi, which is very strong. There's also the French mustard, the grainy mustard, which is quite nice. But I quite like the English mustard, the paste basically. It's got a very nice flavor to it. So add almost 2 teaspoons of mustard. In fact, I'll make it more. I'll make it 3. I love it so much. I always make my flavored mayonnaise and keep them in my fridge, and various flavors you can do. You know, there are tons and tons of flavors you can add to make your own style. Put them with as dips, put them into sandwiches, put them into wraps. It really works well. So this one is very simple. It is just mayo and mustard paste just mixed together, and you get a very nice mustard mayo. It doesn't need any seasoning because mayonnaise has salt in them, and so does the mustard. It's got enough seasoning in it. But look at the color. I mean, there are various things you can add to this. You can add a tempering of mustard seeds. You can add tempering of curry leaves to give it more character if you want. But I think there's a lot of flavors in the salmon, and you still don't want to overpower it with something else. And mustard and salmon, it's a great combination, always works well. So this is set. I'm going to put it into a small bowl and serve it with the fish cakes. But first, I'm going to make the fish cakes. The salmon is ready. It's cooled down, and the potatoes are just enough to give it shape. Now, all you do is basically take a large ball or a quantity in your hand and mix it together. And you see that? You get this into a shape of a ball. Lightly in your hands, make it into a small smooth ball, and then you press it. And you see the quantity of the salmon and the quantity of potatoes. Always 80% should be the fish or the protein, and 20% the potatoes, just to bind it. So I'm going to make these fish cakes. And once you make the fish cakes, you need to leave them into a fridge for around 20-25 minutes for them to harden up, so they become a bit firm. If I pan fry them now, they will actually break because they're still haven't held shape for long enough. I haven't held the shape for long enough. So always put them into a fridge for 25 to 30 minutes, maybe even half an hour is fine. And then we lightly dust it with flour, and then we're going to pan fry it. Here we are. Going to do quickly one more, maybe a couple of more. Gently press it between your fingers and the palm, and it comes together. The other alternative is you can use egg white. Egg white generally works, but it's mostly used for when you're using raw fish or prawns and stuff like those. So it binds it together quite well. In many places you get fish cake which are crumbed and they're deep fried, and they are delicious. Anything with deep fried is delicious. I just like to make it a bit more lighter and healthier. So instead of deep frying it or pan frying it, I will just lightly put them into a pan and grill it with very little oil. And the same pan which was used to saute the vegetables or cook the salmon, because all the flavors are a little bit still left in that oil. Here we are. This is done. Now this is going to go into the fridge for approximately 20 minutes. The salmon cakes have cooled down, and because they've been lying in the fridge for a while, they become firm. So they hold shape quite well. I'm going to heat up the pan and add a tiny quantity of oil. And I'm going to lightly just pan fry them in little oil. Now there are still chances that the cake can tend to break because they'll be so soft and delicate. So for that, what I will do is to avoid that is lightly crush them or dust them with flour just on the flat sides. So literally the flour will basically make it hold shape. So all you do is just basically dust a little flour just to hold shape, and in they go. In the pan, again, little flour on both sides. Shake off the excess flour, and in they go. Then the third one, and when you're dusting them, lightly press so the excess flour just falls off. I know deep frying is an easy method when you do with breadcrumbs. It tastes absolutely fantastic, but it is fried, and it is not really healthy. So try and be as healthy as you can. Lower the heat, and we'll let the fish cakes cook till they're nice and golden on each side. Lightly toss the pan. It helps to loosen the fish cakes. Then I'm going to flip it over with the spatula. Now, where is my spatula? When you need one, you can't find one. But that's okay. I'll use a spoon instead. There you go. Can you see that? It's nice and golden. Now, always remember when you put food down to fry, or pan grill, always put it into a certain fashion. Either go clockwise or anti-clockwise. So the first piece you put in is the first piece you turn over, and not vice versa, because it needs to color very evenly. You see that? It's got a very nice, and because there's a very small quantity of flour which is coating on the outside, it cooks, it crispens up on the outside, it holds shape, and it doesn't break. So a little bit will open up, but that is perfectly acceptable. So slightly opening up is fine because the salmon is quite flaky. This needs to cook a little more. So just make sure that you don't do it on a very high heat. I've lowered the heat down. I'm going to slightly increase the heat. A lot of people have a tendency at this stage to add butter into the pan and cook it into butter. That is all fine. It is there. It cook well. It'll give a very nice flavor. But again, it is very heavy for you. It sticks on to your body. And people like us at a certain age, you really want to go very lean on your fats. So I would always say use it, but in small quantity and in moderation. You shouldn't deprive yourself of all the good things in life. So cream, butter, sugar, have everything, but in moderation. A little more. The smells are so nice. The salmon is cooking through. You can get a hint of the chili, the aroma comes through, the garlic aroma comes through. The spring onion also is warming up. So all these senses are actually getting enhanced with all the aromas. And that's a good thing about cooking. You actually get to relate with food. You get to see. So right from the start of getting a raw piece of salmon or raw potatoes and the vegetables, till a finished product. It's a little journey of food. And if you really enjoy it, I think it is fun. But the biggest joy actually comes when you actually share food with your friends and family. And here, for people like us who stand in front of the camera and to cook for all of you is a real joy. The sense of achievement you get by actually able to showcase something where you can teach people how it is done. So the fish cakes are almost ready. Before a little more. Get my plate. You take a little effort of putting food down into a plate. So I've got a dark slate plate. That's a Welsh slate from the UK. And I'm serving that with my mustard mayo. This is almost done. I'm going to switch off the heat of the pan, and I will gently let it stay in the pan for another minute, just for the flavors to seep in and for the cakes to get slightly crisp. Like I said, they serve with a mustard mayo. It's a great combination, always works. But what always works with seafood is lemon. Lemon wedge, lime wedge. These are flavors which work extremely well. The juices, the citric flavors really enhance the flavor. So when you put them onto a plate and when you serve it to your family and your guest, and they can squeeze in the lemon juice on top of the fish cakes and then dip it into the mayo and have it, I think the flavors just work quite well. Okay, this is done. You can see that? It's nice and chunky. So chunky pieces of salmon. If they get slightly irregular in shape, that is perfectly acceptable. That's perfectly fine. And lastly, this is out of the way. I'm going to wipe my hands. And before I serve it to the guest, I'm going to add a little sprig of parsley, just for a little green color, just to make sure. So I've soaked the parsley in a little cold water so they become a bit firm. And all you do is add a parsley on the plate. So there you have it, my salmon fish cakes, which have got spring onion, a small quantity of red chilli, a bit of garlic, ginger, parsley, and serve with lemon wedge and mustard mayo. Please do try it at home, make it for your friends and family, and make sure you leave your comments on the section below. Until then, bon appetit and happy cooking.